All right, welcome aboard, everybody. So, Francisco Goya. I've got to say, this was the most challenging to research and to put together a presentation for. Um, I didn't know much about Goya going in. Don't have much of a relationship. I will tell you one anecdote from a grad school class, 19th century grad school class, where I spent half the class with my head on my desk, looking down at my desk, not looking up, just peeking once in a while to see if we'd finished yet, because we were looking at a series of prints by Goya that I just couldn't look at. It was from the Disasters of War series, for those of you, maybe Damon and Susanna, you might know that. And they were so horrific. I could not stomach looking at them. So that has always stuck with me as one of the prime Goya experiences of my life, and I've never really gotten into them. And the other artwork that I've seen, I've kind of cringed at. It made me feel uncomfortable.
So why are you subjecting us to that horror?
Well, Ron, that's perfect. I love your transition help there. That's wonderful. So I think it goes to one of the principles for this course and the selection of artists that I explained a bit last week, which is I want to get a variety of different spirits in. Yeah, you want to have some comparison, some contrast. Yeah, and Kim will talk about why he's a great artist too, because I do think he's a great artist. Yeah, and I think he has a distinctive look at the world. Now, what we're going to look at for Goya is we're not going to look at the most horrific stuff. We'll touch on it, but this is not going to get into rated R territory like some of his prints can get into. And Marilyn pointed out that the teaser looked it was like post-battle or post-orgy. One. So that's part of the reason why this was particularly challenging, because I wasn't sure what I was getting into. I wasn't excited personally. It's not my taste. A lot of the work is not my taste. But another reason why he was particularly challenging is because, my goodness, he has a vast repertoire. Last week we had Vermeer. He died at 43. When Goya was 43, he hadn't even come to what he is known for in his art. And he'd already had a first half, like a huge career up to that point. But he goes on to live till he's 82 years old and produces all the way through. And sometimes, I don't know if you've ever played the sci-fi scenario of, imagine if you could live till you were 300 years old, how would that fundamentally change life? Does it mean you'd like have multiple careers? Or does it mean like you'd have several marriages? What would that do to memories and to generations? And in a sense, with Goya, we have a little bit of that in relation to the other artists. Vermeer had one life till he's 43. Goya maybe seems to have maybe 2 or 3 artistic lives. And so narrowing it down, figure out what I was going to do, where his spirit is, was pretty challenging. With Vermeer, there isn't much, but it's pretty straightforward. With Goya, there's a lot. I want to give you a heads up that we are probably going to go over an hour and 15 minutes. I'm going to try to go to 125. 125. Okay. Now, let's see. How do I do this? I will have an opening artwork. We will do a reading of that artwork. Then we'll have a Goya parade. It's going to be a little bit different Goya parade because, as Damon and Susanna pointed out, there are many facets to Goya. So we're actually going to have a double parade. And then I'm going to share with you 3 prints of his. And then we're going to do one more artwork. All right. Here we go. So let's start with an opening artwork. Quick title in the chat for this one. And what's your quick title for that? Okay, let's see. Please no, execution, surrender, ouch, innocent, execution, massacre of rebels, help. All right, wonderful. So I'm going to give you 3 minutes. I encourage you to write out a reading of this artwork. I'll have several close-ups. Remember sounds, quotes for the characters, any movement you might imagine was going on before, what's going to happen after. I'm going to turn off my video, set the timer for 3 minutes, and it's your chance to experience it on your own. Take about 30 more seconds. Start to wrap up and raise your hand when you're done. Got Molly, Marilyn, Ron, Amy, Zach, Mayton, and thanks, Kim. Okay. Great. So I would love to hear what your experience of the artwork is. And just as a reminder, this is not necessarily adding to analysis where everybody's contributing, but hearing what you went through with your 3 minutes with this artwork. And I invite you to, in the chat, if you hear anything that you especially like, to just quickly type in what it is that you're hearing that you think is insightful or eloquently worded. So if you'd like to share, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll get some hands up, and then Ron, you put yours in the chat, and Ron, I'll start off by reading yours, and then I see a couple hands up, and we'll get to those. So first, Ron, you have horror, faceless shooters, crowd is not cheering. Are they next? Are the others holding him or being shot at too? A disturbing image, but he does convey the darkness well. Okay, Marilyn, would you read what you have? Thanks, Ron.
The shooters seem to be looking down, almost like they're praying. They don't seem to want to look at the faces of the men that they're shooting. And the man with his arms out and the light focuses on him, he's in lighter colors. It looks to me like he's trying to be a target and maybe even a little bit protect the others, like me first. It looks like the two men next to him to his left might be holding each other's hands for support. And there's a church in the background for what it's worth. I'm not sure if the light is coming from a spotlight or if it's coming from that light on the ground.
All right, great, Marilyn. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, a couple of things you mentioned were the heads of the soldiers kind of tilted downward, it looks like. Those hats, those tall hats that they have really accentuate that. And then, I really like the way you're describing the central figure about to be executed, raising his arms up as if he might be saying, me first. And then that light that's coming from, I'm thinking there's an unusual looking cube lamp right in the middle, right in front of the soldiers there, that's casting that light. You guys agree with that? Can you see that? And then, okay. And Damon and Suzanne, you point out, yes, the soldiers don't even wear a single uniform. Okay. Like they're in different uniforms, or is that what that means there? Slightly different uniforms? Or if there's something else, go ahead and unmute yourself, anyone, and you want to share that, follow up. And let's see. Molly?
A line of uniformed soldiers with packs. They've just been on a campaign maybe. And tall hats, rifles and sabers aims at a group of men, one in a white shirt with his hands up, the others either hiding their faces and eyes in horror at the scene, or already lying dead and bleeding. There is a lantern shining on the white figure. One man is laid nude over the other bodies. The soldiers are orderly, left knees bent forward as if they're under someone's deliberate command, even though the scene in front of them is disordered and horrific. The eyes of the three figures they face are wild with fright and disbelief. One man clasps his hands, pleading for mercy. The surroundings are rock walls and stone floors against which the noise of guns reverberates. Behind the walls is a great cathedral spire and a dark night sky, unlit by any moon or stars.
All right. Great, Molly. Thank you for sharing that. So a few things that you're noticing to point out. Interestingly, the soldiers that look so ordered there against the disorder of the victims, and that they have these packs as if they are in campaign, that they're moving through. That gives us a little bit of who they are in relation to these people. And yeah, Damon and Susanna, the reverberation of the gunfire in this space against the background of the rocks. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, and you point out those that are already dead there. So combine that with what Ron was saying before, we have a kind of lineup of executions. Those that are in front of the guns are going to then have already witnessed those being shot. And then those that are coming up are going to see the ones that are right now there. Oh, no worries, Ashley. Ashley, did you want to read it, or do you want me to read it?
I can. I didn't mean to, to hit enter, but
Go for it, Ashley.
I can read it. My eyes go immediately to the man still living whose life is about to be taken, but then I see the already fallen bodies, a bloodbath. The white shirt, pure, is a stark contrast. Those eyes, they are horrified and mourning, yet his posture is open in tragic surrender. Some of those around him, those still living, collapse their faces into their hands, unable to bear their fate. It seems they will soon share his. What could he be thinking? Does this man have a cause? What do his executioners take for theirs? So I was kind of more just recording my own experience.
Absolutely, perfect. And then you're really focused on that figure there, what's going through his mind. Because it seems that once, like Marilyn pointed out, that he said he's like saying me first with that gesture. He's not pointing his hand straight up as if I'm
Right.
arrest me. He's throwing them out as if go ahead, shoot, but at the same time, wild with fright, the brow furrowed, the mouth parted. He doesn't want to be the martyr.
And I really liked you just repeated the word wild. I think maybe it was Marilyn, I'm not sure. Someone else had used the word wild, and I really like that just for the constellation of things that is Goya, but for this particular image as well. I really think that fits.
Before I go on to a couple more observations, anything else? And any other readers? So let's see. I've got comment, Damon and Susanna. He seems asking why, and does he have a stigmata? Okay, so stigmata, I don't know if you've seen any stigmatas. It's Jesus on the cross, the wound where the nail goes through his hands, and that's, and you can see in the right hand, maybe there's a mark there that's like a suggestion, drawing your attention to the fact that he is a martyr. And maybe the hands also replicate a little bit of, might remind you of Jesus's hands being on the cross, sacrificed. Yeah, Molly. Okay. All right, a couple of other observations that I'll make. Yeah, everyone's on their knees. One is, if you're in the position of that figure in the white shirt, staring at the gun barrels, what are you seeing exactly? And I'm not sure that you might be seeing much. So Ron, you're looking at death, yeah. But imagine that the brightness of that lantern right there shining into his eyes. Yeah, it's like looking into somebody shining a flashlight at you. And maybe he does see the points of the bayonets that are so close. They're right there. And perhaps he doesn't see the men behind there. So adding another element of this, this anonymous machine of soldiers who were conducting this execution. He can't see their faces. He can just see the guns. Okay, a little bit of the background story here. And I'm curious, this is maybe his most famous image. I'm sure Damon, Susanna, you've seen it. Maybe a few others have seen this before. Have you seen it? Asking in general. Cool, Ron. Well, if you go to the Prado and maybe you've seen this in person, Damon, you've got this painting. It's big, side by side with another one in a kind of before and after scene. They're a pair. This is the before scene. This one is called May 2nd, 1808. And what you have going on here is a kind of rebellion in the town of Madrid, or the city of Madrid, against the occupying French army. Napoleon in 1808 had struck a deal with the Spanish King Carlos IV to, hey, why don't you let us go through Spain on the way to Portugal? Because we want to take over Portugal, but not really Spain. But this is a kind of ruse on the part of Napoleon. And when Carlos IV said, okay, your armies can come in here, then Napoleon settles down in Spain. But when he does so, there is a rebellion in Madrid, and the people of Madrid attack the French soldiers and a contingent of soldiers called the Mamelukes. I think they were a North African, maybe Egyptian contingent of French soldiers. So that's why you see some turbans there. And so after that rebellion on May the 2nd, all those who were part of that rebellion, and maybe those who might not have been part of the rebellion, were rounded up and executed by the French soldiers. There is even, I think, intended to be maybe some crossover with characters. And I kind of buy it with the clothing. I don't know about the facial features, but you might see the figure in the white shirt and the yellow pants might be the one who is in that green jacket there, stabbing the horse. And then his buddy to his right in that hat might be the one who is pulled down the French soldier and is about to stab him with a knife on the left. A pivotal dramatic moment captured by Goya. Well, this is an interesting historical moment of turbulence, and then what Goya's chosen to show is the horror of what Napoleon's troops are doing. Now, this is not the only Napoleonic invasion that we've seen in art before in this course. Remember this one? Thanks, Amy. So if you remember here, we've got a French soldier by himself facing off against the Germanic forest. These firs that are towering over him, like the German people who were rising up against their invaders. And Molly, it's interesting that you're pointing out that contrast. On the left, on the 3rd of May, you have these daunting figures of the French army. And on the right, in Caspar David Friedrichs, you have the daunting figures of the Germanic people. And Kim, I see your hand up. Go ahead, Kim. You want to share something? Oh, no worries, Kim. And then Kim, if you wanted to, I don't know if you had something you wanted to say, but go ahead and unmute yourself if you do. I saw your hand go up. And let me know if that's the case. Okay, roger that, Kim. And then Molly, you have much more still and quiet, and the victor being nature or the innocent. And Molly, even more than Nature of the Innocent, because remember one of the things with Friedrich, he saw the symbolism of these Tannenbaums, of the forests. So this is his country rising up and overwhelming the invaders, while Goya is showing you the invaders overwhelming his country. Now, let's personally connect to it. How about that? So this is my identification of a moment, abstracting out from the particular moment from the perspective of that character who's about to be shot. So goodness knows that it's so glad that none of us have been in a firing line about to be executed. But maybe we have had similar kinds of experiences. And the way I put it is, when have you been on the verge of a terrible fate? And I bet we have all been in some kind of situation like this. Yeah, Molly, that's one of the first things that you might think about when you're asked into the boss's office, and you can already see it in the eyes of the boss, and you know what's coming, and he says, sorry, you're not working in here anymore. And Amy had the same fear, the verge of something terrible. Yes, yeah. When the ultrasound tech comes in and you know it's bad news. Oh yeah, oh yeah, yeah. Or medical situations, when the doctor is there to deliver what you know is going to be bad news, and it's that instant before he delivers it, and that's the moment you have here. Yeah. So how do you respond to that moment? We see how this figure responds. He's like, I'm wild with fright, but I throw myself in front of it, though it's terrible, and I'm scared. He's looking down, yeah, looking down the barrel of a loaded gun, backing away from a bear. Yeah, yeah. And there are other depictions. You might find other depictions in art of figures who are facing death, but maybe have a little bit different approach to it, or a different reaction to facing death. But we're not going to focus on the reaction here. I want to ask Goya about any situations that he's been in like this. So I'm introducing you to Francisco. And the first question we're asking Francisco, as we're sharing a cup of coffee with him, is, hi, Francisco. When have you been on the verge of a terrible fate? And he'd say, how about some small talk, Luke? How's your Spanish, Luke? And then I might say, well, you're the one who painted this. And he'd say, well, you know what? I was in Madrid when this happened, and I could hear the gunshots out my window of those being executed. And I would say, that's great, Francisco. Well, no, that's thanks for sharing that, Francisco. It's not great. Thanks for sharing that. But that seems like something that you witnessed. How about a moment, Francisco, when you were the figure about to be executed? You know, when you were on the verge of receiving some terrible fate. And here's what he might say. He might recall a moment in the year 1793, and he was outside Madrid visiting some friends, and he got really, really sick. He was 46 years old at the time. And he'd talk about, boy, for months, it was getting worse and worse, and nobody had any idea what it was. And I was nearly on the point of death, and then started recovering. But something wasn't quite right. And then the doctor came in, and I could see in his face, he had some news for me. And he had to write down the news because I wasn't going to be able to hear him. And he wrote down, Francisco, you're never going to hear again. You're going to be stone deaf for the rest of your life. And so he might share that moment of receiving that news. And Francisco would have taken this especially hard. Now, it's not like Beethoven when, you know, his life is composing, but in a way, Francisco's life was so social, was so based on interacting with people. He became a tremendously successful artist. He was a court painter at the time, and renowned in Spain. People would in the streets would recognize him and say, hey, "Hola, Don Francisco," and he was pretty well off. He was an extrovert painter, yeah, not like Vermeer, huh? Well, I guess maybe Vermeer might have been extroverty, but yeah, his ability to get along with the aristocracy was one of the reasons why he did so well in his life. And at this point, things started to change. Things started to change, maybe accelerated a certain perspective that was starting to come out in his art, but accelerated that perspective. And he started going more into himself, started getting more angry at things. And we're going to see a little bit of that. But that's the point at which I want to stop here. Now, what I'd like to do is I'd like to take you through a double parade of his art and show you two sets of works. And we're going to come up with 3 words for each of these sets of works. So we're going to see, as you might guess, 2 very different senses of life, 2 very different spirits in these. So Goya intro and 2 parades. I've got the dates down here, 1746 to 1828. So you can see he lived up to his 82 years old. And a reminder there, Vermeer died when he was 43. So Goya had over twice as much adult life as Vermeer. And can you imagine, you know, when we talk about Vermeer, imagine what 40 more years of Vermeer art would have been? But we do get that with Goya. So 2 parades. And before we go through the parades, I'd like to show you the comparisons of past artists first and recall those, and then we'll get into those 2 parades. So quick look back to Caspar David Friedrich. And you might remember some words and some feelings like being overwhelmed, like maybe serenity or contemplation. It's like jumping into different universes. It's silly, fun, optimistic, light. Oh, you did, Ron. Cool. And then let's jump to this parallel universe. Melancholic, gloomy, dramatic, introspective. And then one more here. I liked somebody had come up with the word home. And I like that word, home. Sunday morning strikes me as when it's appropriate too. But calm, peaceful, relaxed, thoughtful. Okay. Titles for each of these. So in the chat, put down a quick title, and then we'll do the 3 words. So I've got 4 and 4. Here's the first one. And you might not be able to make out much of what's going on, but just your first impression. What first words? All right. We've got words like battle, the light, bodies, chaos, night melee, a terrible light, a terrible darkness, nebula. Damon, you've got orgy at judgment. Whoa. I don't think I've ever seen that combination of words before. Damon, do you want to unmute and follow up on what it is that you're thinking there? Or no? Okay. All right. Okay. That's a big no. All right. Next one. All right, let's see what we have. Molly, you've got on waking. Marilyn, aftermath. Amy, opium den. Interesting, Amy. Nathan, waking up. Kim, depression. Lethargy. Susanna, misery. Zach, gloom. Ashley, despairing aftermath. Ron, uncomfortable bedtime. Molly, hazy. Okay, more stealing of words. What did we say about stealing words last time? All right. Oh, it's hazy in response to Amy's. Got it. All right, next one. Oh, Damien, you got waiting for the persecution at the orgy of judgment, huh? Here we go. All right, Marilyn, you're starting with WTF. Molly, oh, Goat Man, tell us another story. Should I have said that in, with the tune of Tambourine Man? Oh, Tambourine Man. Yeah, I'm not going to sing. Sorry. Kim, Bacchanalia. Oh, that seems so quaint. Oh, man. Amy, the sacrifice. Nathan, the gathering. Ron, worshiping the not-so-golden cow. Ashley, evil is ugly. Zach, dark arts. Susanna, El Alquilare with the witches. El Alquilare. Oh, could we hear what El Alquilare is? Let's see, Susanna, I don't know if you want to try to, yeah, go ahead.
There we go. Can you hear us?
Yeah.
La Calare means the meeting in the 12 witches more the devil. The devil is the macho cabrío,
The goat.
the goat.
So the meeting of the witches.
With the macho cabrío, with the goat. That means el Calare.
Oh, the meeting of the witches with the goat.
Always the number is
13?
13.
Wait. What does number 13 have to do with it? Is it because it's just the number 13 is associated with it?
Yes, there are 12 witches and the devil. So it's 13, the number total.
And then the number 13 is the undesirable number, unlucky number. Okay, great. Fantastic. That's wonderful. I love getting more information about witches' Sabbaths. It feels like I'm becoming more cultured. And oh man, you used to notice the babies, Molly, huh? Okay, one more. This goat is the strangest look on his face. Here it is. Marilyn, is that just you're not quite sure what's going on, or is that to let me know you didn't see it? The question marks there.
It
Here.
means I'm utterly confused.
Oh, well, give that confusion some words. What is it that you did see?
Okay, all right.
Yeah. Okay. Always have like a starting point. That's where the quick titles are. They're not like, here's my declaration of what this is. It's more, here's my starting point of my first impression, and then you move from there. And I'm not really being fair at all with these parades. And I hope you'll complain about it, because we haven't really looked closely at any of these works in the parades. Just throwing them out there real quick. Okay, so here's what we have. Mayton, you've got the running of the giant. Molly, God getting out of the shower. Ron, Gulliver's Travels. Zach, Big Boy. Amy, Giant Protection. Kim, Atlas farted. Oh, man. Okay, all right, Marilyn, a big man needing breech clout with tiny pioneers beneath him. Ashley, an unholy sky. Susanna, reign of a giant. Okay, so let me show you all four of these again, and let's see. This is where you're going to come up with 3 words. 3 words to describe the feelings of being in this world. I don't know if it helps to think about it this way. If you're in a Disneyland ride and these are what you encounter in a Disneyland ride, how do you come out of it feeling? So let me go back to the beginning here. And remember, raise your hand when you have your 3 words. Don't put them in, or don't push enter in the chat yet. So here's the 3rd one, this orgy at judgment or orgy, the darkness. Waking up. The goat conductor. And the giant. So 3 words here. And raise your hand when you have them. Raise your hand when you have them. All right, go to Ashley, Molly, Damon, Susanna, Amy. Hey, George. Okay, keep typing. If you're still typing, go ahead and push enter if you have yours. All right, Ashley, you got helplessness, darkness, mysticism. Oh, helplessness is an interesting one there. Zach, foggy, ominous, and misery. Oh, ominous. Amy, helplessness as well, misery, and darkness. So we're getting some repeated words here. Molly, you've got macabre, overwhelmed, vulnerable. Mayton, you've got darkness, overwhelming, mystic. Kim, darkness, gloom, evil, horror. And Mayton, ominous resonates. Marilyn, you've got sorcery, gloom, and weirdness. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of darkness, a lot of helplessness, a lot of ominous. Ron, you've got chaos, nutty, disturbing, unpleasant. Damon, suffering, mystical malevolence. And Molly, you're going to draw out some Old English. Mhm. And Susanna, gods and humans. Interesting. Oh, Molly, like the Macbeth witches. Mhm. All right, great. Okay, thank you for those. Are we ready for parade number 2? So I've got 4 of these as well. Quick title for this one. Well, let me know if you didn't get a chance to see it. I know it's just like a portrait. Okay, let me take a look and see what we have. Amy, you've got uncertain soldier. Molly, hero at tea. Marilyn, suspicious dignity. Ron, commander. Mayton, the proud captain. Kim, young and intent on warring. Zach, hero portrait. Damon, lovely, gentle nobility. Susanna, elegance. And Marilyn, supercilious dignity. Oh man, I need to look up supercilious. Marilyn, could you help me with supercilious? What does supercilious mean? What's a synonym?
Kind of haughty, superior.
Got it.
Yeah, I went from superstitious to supercilious because it seemed more like he was haughty than suspicious.
Great. Thank you, Amy. Marilyn. I was looking at Amy's response. Amy, that was quite a range of responses. Yeah. Okay, next up. Here we go.
Oh, did you show it to us?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, my cat was harassing me.
Mine does too. Here it is.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's take a look and see what we have. Nathan, ahead we go. Molly, you're really liking this tea time stuff. Tea time on the battleground. Ashley, a light frenzy. Amy, lots of people doing something. Great. Kim, you've got chaos with the carriage. Damon, luxurious hunt / war. Zach, royal convoy. Marilyn, carriage journey. Ron, bus will stop for 20 minutes before continuing. And Damon and Susanna, tea time at the battlefront. Okay. All right, next. Oh, did you guys see it? Okay. Sorry. Oh man, this is great. The contrast of answers between this and the previous set of 4. Let me see what we have. He fell off his horse. Another rest stop during travel. Same answer. Lots of people looking up. Oop, there. Semicircle in the afternoon. Song time. Damon, serenade of friends. Molly's Fragonard minus the wings. Okay, one more. And here it is. Quick title for that one. Family portrait, royal family portrait. We're really trying. Actually, I'm guessing that's in reference to the figures who look like they're really trying to hold the pose, something like that. Baton, gathering time for portrait. Ron, family portrait, but don't smile. Stern, bejeweled family. Family portrait. And Zach, let's try this one more time. Everyone look at the camera. Okay. Maybe they've been doing it for a while. All right. So I'm going to go back to the beginning, show you the 4 again. Damon, you have odious, arrogance, elegantly. Oh, man. Oh, man. Okay. So we had this fancy general at tea time here. There's carriage ride and a little picnic going on. Somebody noticed that there's some serenade going on here. And then arrogance elegantly. Okay. 3 words, and raise your hand when you have them. 3 words to describe this set. And Ron, you're saying that general, if it was a camera, I'd say he does not want his picture taken. And Ash, you point out they're so stiff, you do not want to party with those people. Three words, and try to focus on the emotions rather than the subjects. Try to focus on what they make you feel rather than who they are. It's all right if you get in like who they are as well, but see if you can get in how they make you feel. Or how the places feel, or the activities, just the realm that these people are in. I see 2 hands up. And you might have contradictory emotions too. This set is more challenging than the previous set. Let's see. Amy, Marilyn, Molly, and Kim. And keep typing if you're still typing, but go ahead and push enter with what you have. Go ahead and push enter. All right. I'm gonna start reading through these. Damon, you've got nobility beautified doubtfully. And I'm guessing that's all together. Nobility beautified doubtfully. So there's an undercurrent of doubt in the beautification of the nobility. Amy, you've got dignity, orderliness, and civilization. Oh, Marilyn, is there something you want to share?
Oh, no.
Oh, no? Okay, no worries. Let's see. Molly got togetherness and circumspect elegant. Oh, togetherness, circumspect, and elegant. Molly, I'm not, circumspect is one of those words, those 10-cent words I don't know well. Could you help us with that or help me? What do you mean by circumspect?
Well, their portrait, they're all very carefully put together. All their dresses are matching and they have all their medals hanging just in the right place. And it's sort of, there's a certain rule to how everyone is arranged. And
Got it. So nicely arranged.
it goes along with Amy's words of dignity and civilized. Everything is just so. And the same with the man at the tea with the hat, the guy with all the medals.
Yeah.
He's very, he's dressed very carefully.
Got it. Just so. Okay. So then Marilyn, you've got arrogance, elegance, and camaraderie. Kim, hidden dangers, emotion-driven rampages, fear in the sunshine. All right. So I guess you're seeing some kind of dangers going on in the bottom two scenes, Kim. Is that what I'm suspecting? Some hidden things that might be going on. And then Ron, you've got upper class family hired to paint them reluctant subjects. Oh, Kim, you find them a little scary. Interesting. Okay. Mayton, grace, pompousness, and aristocracy. Susanna, pleasure of living. Okay, great. Zach, bright, bouncy, sunny. Yeah, they're very bright. And you've got two words that convey that, bright and sunny. Just like, whoa. Ash, you've got opulence, aristocracy, jauntiness, and sunlight. And Molly, these are all really hard to read. Can't tell what to make of them emotionally. All right, great. I will talk a little bit about this. So some of you are having mixed feelings about seeing these figures. They don't look like people you'd want to party with. There's something that's kind of made up about them. And Zach, as a juxtaposition to the last parade, which I'm going to bring up here again, it's so different. But at the same time, I would agree that maybe if I wouldn't really be a fan of a portrait like the family portrait there, where everybody looks kind of stiff. But guess what? Goya was beloved by the aristocracy. He was court painter for 40 years and retired on his own terms. You think of importance of being earnest in terms of almost being playfully cajoling of the aristocracy. And maybe it seems that way, but he was adored. Everybody who was anybody in aristocracy in Spain and Madrid wanted him to do their portraits. And he did so throughout his life. But he also had this side here. Now, I talked a little bit about before this transition point in Goya's life where he becomes deaf. And it isn't a transition point from him going to doing bright, sunny, aristocratic, pompous portraits to then doing dark things. No. He would go on for the rest of his life being a court painter who showed the most fashionable people and the most fashionable settings. That was his day job. But then the things that were more personal to him, he started doing more of those after he became deaf. And those were darker. I've got 3 images here. The first portrait I showed you already was in his early 30s, and he looks plump and kind of like he could be fun at a party and have, and maybe even dance with you. And the central self-portrait there. Amy, they're not. And that's the point. They're not. The central one here is when he became, just like a few years after he became deaf. So you can see maybe more haggard, more intense. And then we've got one more image here from in his late 60s, where maybe he looks really disheveled and worn down. And I think maybe if I were to, well, no, I'm not going to say that thought. I want to adjust a little bit what I'm saying, Amy. All the four that I showed you, no, three of the four, and most of the dark stuff that he does comes after he's deaf. But after he's deaf is not the point at which he stops doing the aristocratic portraiture and those scenes. He keeps doing those. And his fame is still high throughout his life. But he does, after he becomes deaf, start to produce things that are a little bit more dark. And I want to get into a little bit of these. I've got two images here from prints that he created. The first set of prints that he did, this was something he just started on his own, called Los Caprichos. And you can see the date 1797, 1799, so a few years after he became deaf. And maybe it's one of his most famous images, the one on the left. It's called The Sleep of Reason Produces Monsters. And maybe Susanna, you can correct me on my Spanish translations occasionally. But this was something that he created and promoted himself. And it was not commissioned. And there was a series, I want to say, it was dozens of different prints that were satirical in nature. He was looking at society and picking out all the things that he thought were worthy of being made fun of, satirized, and he did so. And he pulled he had like an advertisement in the Madrid newspaper, I think even front page advertisement for this series of prints that he was going to sell, that he self-produced. And he's a famous artist at this time period, very famous artist. He produced 300 of these series. He sold 27 of them. That's it. Nobody wanted to see these. Later on, he would produce another set called The Disasters of War from 1810 to 1820. So this was around the time that Napoleon's troops were occupying Spain. So after that first image I showed you where there's that rebellion, and these disasters of war, he didn't even bother to sell. He just, I think he made a proof or two to show to his friends, but that's it. They were basically for him. I want to show you three quick ones, two from the Los Caprichos and one from the Disasters of War, because I think it's going to give us a little bit of insight in today and how we respond to social upheaval and the traumas of our life. Because I think we can very easily get into a perspective of, let's focus on the anger that we feel at the things that are happening and the people that are doing things that we don't want them to do. And this is, I'm going to be pretty political here, but I'm not going to be political at the same time. I'm going to show political content from today, but I think the point that I'm going to try to make is not that Goya is being political, but rather that Goya is focusing in on one aspect of things where he had many other things to focus on. He's focusing on the things that make him angry. So three quick titles. Well, actually, let's do one at a time with the title. We're not going to read these, just the title. Yeah, thanks. One Can't Look. Yeah, that's for this other image. And you might even see some similarity with the muskets on the right there and the figures who are about to be executed. Okay, first print, quick title in the chat. This one. Freaks, drunken evil, silly drinking, the toast of the specters, drinking with old men surrounded by death. Oh man. Drinking to death. Yeah, Ron, got it. And I might come back to that. Wrinkly, the cute drunks. Okay, so here it is again. You might be able to look at the outfits that these figures are wearing and be able to tell what their profession is. Anybody want to quickly hazard a guess as to who they are? Yeah, monks. And then he labeled all these with a caption, and the caption at the bottom, Nadia nos ha visto. Nobody has seen us. So you've got a bunch of monks who are obviously not supposed to be getting drunk like this, but who are tipping over the barrel, getting so drunk and thinking that they can get away with it. And I bet you could probably think of some parallels to today of people doing things, and I can get away with this. And I'll just draw attention to one of them in the news recently. Those of you who have been following British politics, there's that Dominic Cummings, an aide to Boris Johnson, who is being raked over the coals because he broke quarantine rules. And here's just one little bit of satire that I was looking for. I don't know if any of you know the song "I Would Walk 500 Miles." And so we've got Dominic Cummings here singing, "I would drive 200 miles and I would drive 200 more." The arrogance of doing something that they're not supposed to be doing. So that's one little quick example. Let's do another one. Quick title for this one. All right, what did you see? Just the first words that came to mind. Nathan, you've got shame. Marilyn, waiting for death. Amy, shaming. Molly, pillory of shame. Ashley, at stake. Kim, waiting for dying. And Ron, I'd give you the same suggestion as Marilyn. Just for any words. They got pilloried by rumor. And Zach, public death. All right. So you got to figure here who's at a stake. And it looks like he's tied up. You can see his hands tied and a bunch of people in the background looking on who can't see their faces. There's a sign on his, and do you notice around his neck? He's got a knife. And this is from the series Disasters of War. I don't know what the words are on the sign, but at the bottom it says, "Para una navaja," for a knife. So the implication is this is what's happening to him, being pilloried and shamed for carrying a knife, or by a knife. Thank you. Being pilloried and shamed because he's carrying a knife. So the French authorities are going to see him as a threat, and so they're, for something that everybody carried all the time, it becomes a big deal. So what's something today that maybe could be a parallel? So it made me think of this. Kevin James, the actor, made a short little movie called Out of Touch. And it's basically two friends who are running away from the law because they were caught shaking hands and reported. So a little parallel there. And I've got one more. Quick title for this one. Oh man. Okay. Let's see. The doctor is an ass. Donkey at morning. Indignity of death. Your doctor has been replaced. Of what illness did he die? Molly, you're practicing your Spanish, I see. Mate and donkey chewing a woman. The comforting ass. Trump was the doctor. Democracy killed him. Yeah, so of what did he die? Of what sickness did he die is the caption, and the implication here, it's not the sickness that killed him, but the medicine or the doctor. And I think you can see maybe the doctor's like taking his pulse or something, or the jackass is taking his pulse. And then there was a cover of the New Yorker from a week ago or something that had this on it. Yeah. So I just wanted to give you that taste that a lot of what Goya is spending time with is looking at the satire and focusing in on what is making him angry in his society. Now, I want to give you a heads up. We don't have time to get into this, and it's not something I planned for, but I do want to give you a heads up. And Damon, you forgot there's Goya? Yeah. There's a lot of them. There, I think the Disasters of War is a series of 80, and maybe the Los Caprichos, or maybe at least 60. If you want to do a little bit more research into the direction that Goya's art goes into, look for the black paintings. Look for the black paintings. And the black paintings are paintings he did on the walls of his home in his 70s. And so they become pretty dark, so that they become really, really dark. And so that a lot of the things that we saw in that first parade were like the things that he would have around him all the time. Just waking up and they would be there. So you're seeing this personal art that is in contrast to the art that he does for his job. And so you get an angrier, a darker, a gloomier kind of person who sees a lot of the horrific things that humans do and is filled with cynicism and pessimism. And now I've got one more artwork for you to end this evening. So let's do a quick title for this one. Quick title. All right. Great. So Mayton, you've got drink this, my lady. Amy, drink this. And it's interesting that in the chat, I'd ask you the follow-up question, Amy, what's the tone of voice? Because there's a couple of different tones that I'm seeing in the chat. Kim, you might as well. Marilyn, drink this, you'll feel better. Ron, drink it whether you want to or not. All right, Amy, are you unmuting?
Yeah, I left mine ambiguous on purpose because I couldn't tell.
Got it, great. Okay, and Zach, you got one more sip. And Molly, you've got, it's good for you. Okay, so let's do a communal reading for this one. So just type in anything that you're seeing in the chat, whatever quick observations, no matter how mundane or seemingly uninteresting, and I'll have a couple of close-ups and I'll ask some questions. So here it is. What are you seeing? What do you see? There's a crowd around them. Yeah, it's kind of hidden in the darkness in the back. Zach, he's grasping the sheets. Yeah, it's not as if he's going to pull them up. It's as if I can maybe imagine the hands kind of fretting, nervous, or in pain. Molly, you've got the patient's color is grayish, like he's half dead already. And it's interesting you're calling him a patient. A patient rather than, say, a drunken friend. Damon, you've got the older man seems to be dying. And then my follow-up question there, that seems to match a little bit of what Molly might be suggesting. And then what other details do you see? Maybe the grasping of the sheets contributes to that. Ash, you got the man sitting seems incapacitated. Let's zoom in a little bit here. The sick person looks very weak, not certain of the gender. Molly, you've got his face and eyes are limp. Yeah. Amy, you've got the offer is using a threatening grasp, or is it helpful? Okay, so I'll be curious to know what the close-up, what do you think the close-up suggests? Ron, you've got, he offers a drink, but doesn't seem very, very sympathetic. His face is pretty stern, right? Ashley, it's unclear to me if the person with his hands around him is trustworthy. Okay, that's a great question to ask. I thought he was in his bed with his doctor trying to help him. David, the liquid looks red, not water. I thought it was water at first. Yeah, it looks red. Is it wine? Is it medicine? Zach, yeah, doesn't have the strength to hold up his head or body is collapsing. Oh, for even the effort of sitting. So he's got to hold him up in order to get him to drink. Someone is dying, you're saying, Kim. Who's in the background? Is this the hemlock? So he might as well drink it. So is this helping him to die? And Maton, you've got the person seems to be turning away. The other person seems to be pushing the person towards a drink. Okay, so he's like, yeah, imagining the motion here, like pulling him over. Come on, buddy, drink this. The doc is not optimistic. Yeah, is it poisoning or tender care? Would he poison with so many witnesses? Amy, you've got him trying to strike a pose to help figure it out. Yeah, I think that'd be good. And I'm wondering if you're there with somebody else and you take the pose with them, what that will do. Because I think one thing that might become apparent is the closeness that you are to that person. Maybe try rewinding the scene and imagining how they got to this position here. Ash, you got the close-up suggests a distant gaze, but I can't tell if it is sorrow or disinterest in his well-being. Someone has a document, the will, maybe in the back. Oh, maybe, yeah. The old guy seems heavy. Could be extreme concern. So here's what I'm imagining. Oh, Marion, I think if you're trying to poison the weaker man, he would look more intent and less vacant. And Damon, yeah, you're hearing a sigh from the old man. I mean, you might even be hearing some moaning. Oh, and he's still got energy because he's grasping at those sheets. All right, I'm imagining maybe that he was lying down before, right? Maybe there's a pillow back there and he's lying down, and this doctor figure comes over and lifts him up. And then he's using his shoulder to prop him up while he's trying to reach around to get him to drink this. And you can hear the grasping of the sheets going on. And everybody else in the back is just quiet. So the key is knowing who this person is. And why? Is he trying to kill him, or is he trying to save his life? And Molly, you're becoming metaphorical. I'm curious, which direction are you going in? Kill him or save his life? And Kim, it's interesting. There's malevolence in all of Goya's works we've seen. Amy leaning to save. Molly leaving to save, but he has no hope. And Damon and Susanna, I think if you strike the pose, he's caring for him. Nathan, save. The left hand is gentle. Yeah, I'm going to go back to that left hand. It is. And I bet he's squirming. I bet this patient is, he's not going to be easy to give this to. Okay. Yeah, he's in pain. All right, a little bit of background here. The doc is determined, pessimistic. I can see the determination. Those are tight lips there. And the way he's set him up on his shoulder. And he's wrapped his arm around, he's moving that arm very close. So maybe euthanasia, yeah. So I've seen a few times a distant look, and here's what I'm wondering that we don't have a good idea of, and that is the three-dimensionality. So if we went into a profile view here, I'm wondering if the eyes of the doctor would be looking at the face of the figure rather than beyond it, because the face would be more ahead rather than side by side. Okay, and Ashley, you're pointing out he's not thrusting. Yeah. All right, here's some background. Well, no, here's a comparison. We just saw another doctor. Just based on this comparison, does this doctor look competent or like a jackass? Well, that's a loaded question. Here's one more. Another comparison. Another figure who is getting solace from somebody else. But the thing I want you to focus on here in this, if you remember Rembrandt's The Return of the Prodigal Son, you have the figure who's receiving the solace, the son, who is just completely accepting of it and grateful to be received. This patient is squirming, is moaning, and is not particularly grateful. So here's the kind of moment that I'm suggesting, and we're not going to get too much into it because we're already about an hour and 30 minutes, but here's how I describe this kind of moment. Receiving aid when you were less than cooperative. So when have you received aid when you were less than cooperative to that aid? All right, I'll share one quick story because I think that will really help to see what I'm talking about. And it's a personal story. It's not a fun one. When I was in college, I had a period of depression and a terrible breakup. I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my art history degree, and my mentor was out of town, and I started being depressed and stopped going to classes. And I don't remember how long after, maybe a week or maybe 2 weeks after I'd stopped going to classes, there's a knock at my door, and I can hear my friend, and she's yelling, she's saying, Luke, Luke, you there? And I don't respond. I just want to curl up and not pay attention. And she keeps knocking and saying, and she says, Luke, I know you're in there. I'm not leaving till I see you. And finally I give in. And I open the door. And that contact with her was one of the key things that helped me out of that depression. And when I'm seeing this scene, that's kind of what I think of. I think of, I'm not really wanting to have the medicine, but somebody was insisting on it. So, Francisco, what do you know about receiving aid you were reluctant to get? And you can imagine that Francisco, with his growing anger and his growing pessimism and the way he thought of doctors, wouldn't be terribly excited about having a doctor help him when he became extremely ill when he was, I think, 74 years old. In 1820, he became extremely ill, and the speculation is maybe he even got the plague. But there's a particular doctor who helped him, and this doctor is named Dr. Arrieta. And Dr. Arrieta, who was a specialist of the plague, that's why it's speculation that he might have gotten the plague, saw him through it and helped him out of this. And he went on to live for 8 more years after that. And this painting is a double portrait, a self-portrait and a portrait of his doctor, Dr. Arrieta. And at the bottom, there's an inscription, and I forgot what the inscription says, but basically it's to Dr. Arrieta for saving my life. And this was a painting that he made for him as a token of gratitude. So I wanted to end on this one here because those dark figures, I don't know who they are, but I can maybe imagine them being the dark demons that constantly inhabited Goya's life. And it's interesting. That's curious. It seems obvious now. And he was a recalcitrant figure who did not, he would berate his friends in letters that he wrote, but he was capable of seeing the decency and the goodness and of feeling gratitude and of going beyond the pessimism that he felt most of the time. So as a quick recap here, we go back to the 3rd of May, 1808. It's not a heroic image. It's an image of the horror of this invasion by the French. And we see the bitterness and anger that he has and the gloom that he feels, like that colossus who's terrorizing the countryside, or the injustices that he sees around him that he's mocking, whether it's the hypocrisy of the clergy or the laws, the unfair laws that he's seen around him. And he spent his time dwelling on these things. And so that's why you see a lot of his work being especially dark. But he also had this generosity in him too, that occasionally came out, a little bit that was not quite untouched by the pessimism, but could reach beyond it. So last question, what would Francisco paint if he were here today? Ron, yeah, he'd paint Trump administering medicine. Yeah. But curiously, Ron, he might also be the portrait painter for Donald Trump. And Amy, you don't want to see it. And Molly, the hypocritical politicians. So something interesting about the satires and so forth. Very rarely were any of the figures identifiable. So it wasn't like a political cartoon that he had. It was more a commentary in general on society. Damon and Susanna, he could paint every part of society. Yeah. He might make masks humorous. The doctors in the ICUs. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Who are today's aristocrats? Maybe the governors. He might also show the scenes of the horrors, like the panics, or maybe when I think there, when New York's, or maybe go to Italy and the overwhelming cases that are flooding hospitals. The giant virus hovering above the earth. Yeah, like the Colossus. All right. He would definitely spend a lot of time feeding on the anger and feeding on the horror and on the pessimism. But maybe there would also be a tinge of gratitude. All right. That's it for Francisco Goya. Any quick final thoughts about him?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Who won the voting for next time?
I will share that with you in a very brief moment. And Ron, not your fave. Great. Let's see, Ashley, he tends to dramatize faceless masses. Curious how he would be treated in this time of quarantine. And made you feel more sympathetic towards him now than before. And then something that I realize is the question that I want to ask at the end of each of these is not necessarily, do you like the artist now after we've gone through them, but more, does their spirit shine more brightly for you? Do you have more clarity on, yes, I can feel who they are, like this light, this particular light of theirs on me? And Marilyn, you like him more now, especially like the big naked man. And by the way, the Dr. Arietta is in Minneapolis, and it's one that I've seen in person a couple of times. And if you ever go to the Minneapolis Institute of Arts, you can find the Dr. Arietta there, and I think that's my favorite. And Amy, still confusing and hard for you to know. No, that completely makes sense. Okay, next week. And Kim, you understand him better. David or Waterhouse, and the consensus, I think by a 2-to-1 vote, it's going to be John W. Waterhouse. Yeah, George, I'm going to fade you. I know I'm over time. John W. Waterhouse. And this one will be challenging for a different reason, because there's not much personal in Waterhouse, but we'll take a little bit different track with him. And Damon, you've got to appreciate him more as a genius who lived for over 80 years. It helps explain why he is so hard to understand. Yeah. Yeah. And I think also that he was in two worlds. He was a monarchist, and he was a Catholic, but those feelings started to erode. Okay, everybody, thank you for sticking around for an hour and 40 minutes. I will talk to you guys next week. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Luke.
Hey, my pleasure.